Want to grow on TikTok? Join our agency for support with expert mentoring, stream protection, and audience growth. It's time to level up. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description to join today.
So it's Danny Flexon here for SecondsOut. Delighted to be joined by boxing manager and now promoter, Charles SIMS. Do you like Charles or Charlie now you're a promoter?
Charles is my given name, so I suppose I've been using that, but everybody knows me as Charlie Danny. We're old mates, so you can call me that.
That's very kind of you. I appreciate it. Yeah, promoter now. Origins, a new series, a new dawn is the first show, of course, December the 13th, so next week. Just tell us why you've decided now is the right time to move in that direction.
Yeah, I think this has been the big question for us. Like, why now? Obviously, I've been a manager for the last decade. My father, Tony SIMS, has been Hall of Fame coach, 30 years in the game. So very experienced. I feel for me, like I've done my apprenticeship to get to promoter status, and just felt like the right time, the right market, got the right fighters on board. Jimmy Sains, George Lillard are our main events for the evening. Just big ticket sellers, good prospects coming through. I think also part of this was, keeping our fighters active and making sure that the young fighters get the development that they need to improve and grow. And also for those who are bouncing back, we've got Maisie Rose and Shannon Ryan both on the card bouncing back. So just kind of keeping people active, getting them back out, and then setting everybody up for a big 2025. But for me, this platform really bridges the gap between the big major platforms and the small ball shows. And I think there was a need for it, and I feel like we've slotted into that pretty comfortably.
And you guys, you and Tony have had a great relationship with Matchroom, of course, for many, many decades now. What's their role been in this?
Well, originally there wasn't really any role for them. We just kind of said to them, look, we're going to do this show. We want Jimmy and George to headline. And they said, yeah, that's fine. Kind of makes sense. We're kind of have limited slots for the back end of the year. So we're cool about it. But actually what happened was my promoter's license, it doesn't come through until the 12th of December. And the show's on the 13th. So I said to them, look, would you mind, putting your license up for us until mine comes through and fully processes, which is obviously why we've done it in association with Matchroom. But they've been very supportive. Every time, I've needed to lean on them for some advice, I've been able to make some calls, in particularly to Frank Smith, Tom Dallas, Matty Lawless, and people like that. So they've been very helpful. But they've also said you're on your own, and this is if you want to do this is your venture and you're on your own. So this is all our money. We financially put everything in out of our own pocket. We've got our own team, and yeah, it's all been pretty challenging but pretty exciting stuff. And whether we'll do something with Matchroom long term, I don't know, but that's the relationship for this event.
And tell us a bit more about the concept, because obviously I've read through the article regarding the thing as a whole, and it all sounds really cool and revolutionary and narrative driven, that kind of stuff. And it's a lot what we've seen from Misfits and Jake Paul and other elements that are coming to the fore in boxing in recent years. How will it look in practice?
Yeah, well, big part of setting this up, we focused a lot on storytelling, and that was a big part of what huge boxing is. And I think also for our fighters, we've just realized that a lot of the younger guys and girls in particularly, they don't get their stories told as well when they're on the major shows. And obviously when you're on the major shows, it's about the main events and the bigger fights on the card. So what I've realized is, and what I've noticed is even more since I've been doing this, is that all the young guys and girls, they're just not particularly comfortable with being on camera. They're not used to it. They've had limited airtime, and they're not actually used to telling their story. And I think that's a big part of who they are as a fighter. You know, as boxing purists, we love watching fighters fight, and we can follow big fights and we can go to big events and watch big fights. But actually getting to know the fighter and getting to understand who they are helps us relate to them in some way. And that's usually how we go on a journey with them. So Origins is the first chapter, and we have Destiny is chapter 2 and Legacy is chapter 3. But in order to get to chapter 2 and chapter 3, you've got to break through Origins. And George Lidard is probably on the cusp of that now. He's looking for his first title fight, December 13th. He's got a big fight lined up, big domestic fight with Jordan Reynolds lined up for early 2025. And then we'll look to go again with another Origin show in April 2025. And if he breaks through that, I would really like to see us move on to the Destiny chapter with him. Bigger venue, bigger title, and do something really exciting. But for me, this whole thing is about narrative. It's all about storytelling, and it's all about giving our fighters a platform to share their story. And that's what makes them all unique.
How will you be doing that? Through what media will you be telling those stories?
So we're going to be doing some long form stuff, and we're introducing it at the moment. It should come out in the next couple of weeks. But I think depending on who we broadcast this with, we're in talks with a couple of big broadcasters. We're going to use that platform. And everybody that we've been speaking to, and we've whittled it down to a couple now, this has been a big standpoint for us and a big decision-making process for us with who can get on board with this and who can lend us their big platform almost to share these stories. So I expect that probably to be announced by the end of this week. And this isn't just about events. This isn't just about we're going to do the one-off event and then we're going to move on to the next thing. And that's how it tends to happen with most promotions. They just focus on one event. Storytelling has to continue afterwards as well. And although we're going to be doing as much as we can in build up to this event, it will be going on post-event as well. So that's why we're looking to partner with somebody who can get on board with this, really buy into it and invest into our products, but also our fighters who need this platform really to break through.
You obviously played a part in one of the first big kind of scripted reality shows, or whatever we're calling those these days. It seems like a million years ago now, it must do for you, but did you take anything from that leads into this kind of narrative-driven concept?
Yeah, definitely. I've been around entertainment for a long time, and 10 years ago I was in a big show, and even more recently I wrote and co-created a show that was very successful. We sold it to Netflix, and I spent a couple of years in LA, Hollywood in particularly, where I actually studied a bit at UCLA, just going through filmmaking and documentary making and understanding, how to build scripts and how to tell stories, even from a raw reality point of view. So I've studied this. I know what you need to do in order to tell good stories. And I've kind of just partnered that with boxing. And, I've looked at what boxing needs. I think actually you mentioned it earlier. I think Misfits and Jake Paul have done a brilliant job, because what they've allowed and what they've created is really a narrative, but it's kind of like a full contact WWE. Like that's what they've created, and that kind of works for them. But for us, we're not, WWE. We're not, looking to be part of a big circus. Some of these fighters are real people. They've got real stories, and they're respectable. And not everybody needs to throw glasses of water and chairs up in the air. I think it's just about connecting and relating with people on a real level. And all we're trying to do is dig as deep as we can with each individual and try and find something that relates and connects to the audience. So we've just spent a long time on that. It's going to be tough to do after one event and get it absolutely spot on. But I'm hoping that people will come on a journey with us and follow this story as we go through the different chapters.
You didn't seem necessarily like a natural fit for a reality TV show. You seem generally like quite a low-key, insular individual. But now as a promoter and with a new concept as well, you have to be a bit more public facing. How are you finding that adjustment?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I wasn't a good fit for reality. I did it because the opportunity fell in my lap a couple of times, and I think the first opportunity I had to get out of it, I did. So, but I've always been comfortable behind the camera, and I've always been somebody who's quite creative and wants to make things happen, but not necessarily for myself. And throughout this process, yes, I've had to do a lot of talking. I've had to answer a lot of questions about what this is and why we're doing it. And that side of it, I'm pretty happy to do because it's something that, I ultimately created. But the fighters are really selling it for me. That's their story and their narrative, and they're going to be the ones that ultimately take huge boxing to where it needs to go. But I think actually what I've been doing is sharing my experiences as somebody who isn't particularly comfortable being in front of the camera, someone who hasn't really wanted to be the center of attention or under the spotlight. I've been sharing those experiences with the fighters and just sitting them down every time we do an interview. I'm just saying to them, like, look, I know how it feels when you're on camera. I know what it's like when you're trying to tell a story or trying to sell a certain narrative. Let's just slow it down. Let's just be calm. Let's just be clear. Let's try and get the story told how you want to tell it. I also have used certain techniques for people and said to them, sometimes when you do these interviews, like even that we're doing now, you'll finish and come off of it and you'll think, oh, why didn't I say this or why didn't I say that? So I'm also teeing them up and saying, giving them an opportunity to almost go back on certain points and readjust. So I'm using a lot of techniques that I've used over a long period of time to help these guys and girls tell their story. And it's been a process. There's been a lot of trial and error of it. We haven't got every single thing right, but I would expect in the next couple of weeks that it starts to come together, and we'll start to see that journey flow. And hopefully moving forward, we can all get on board and follow them into the next chapters.
Do you feel that kind of approach to media and to PR, especially compared to other sports and other forms of entertainment, a bit overdue in boxing?
Well, I think obviously you look at like big successful models, mentioned it earlier, WWE was basically all storytelling, except they just don't have the contact. And I think Misfits have done a good job, and Jake Paul in particular has done a good job with it. Just think with boxing, it's got a little bit lost. Doesn't really know whether it should be the WWE narrative, and is the only way to get media attention now to throw chairs up in the air and throw glasses of water everywhere, or is it just boring to kind of sit there and not really say much and be that kind of reserved person, which is what we're seeing, people getting up on top tables, not really saying much. It's hard to buy into. So I think with social media now, it's become so accessible to get great content, long form content in particularly. I just don't see why we wouldn't use it and just try and dive in a bit deeper. I think also the big promotional companies, Matchrooms, your Queensberries, they're so busy with their schedule that actually they don't need to fix something, that isn't already broken for them. And I think when I was coming into the game and looking at what we're going to do differently, obviously I don't have the financial resources that Matchroom and Queensberry have. I don't have the platform that Matchroom and Queensberry have. So, and I also don't have a big team like Matchroom and Queensberry. Their content team alone are huge. So it was just kind of about how do we stand out and how do we be different and what lane do we choose to start with. So we've kind of found ourselves in this lane, and I want to really focus on this. I think it is important for boxing. Boxing is one of the only sports where you actually buy a ticket to go and watch one individual person, and the undercard is a bonus. So football, you go to watch your team. Most sports you go and watch the team, but really boxing is one of the small minorities where you buy an individual ticket to watch somebody. But if you can watch somebody and really understand why you're watching them, not just for the boxing element, but understand why you're watching them, then you'll buy and invest into it a lot more. And a good example of that recently was Bivol Beterbiev, huge fight, needed to be made just for the sport of boxing. Undisputed fight, brilliant fighters. I really enjoyed watching the fight. I really enjoyed the event, all the build up to it, the promo to it. But I still couldn't tell you on one hand anything about either of them. I think, they're brilliant at the pinnacle of the sport, but I couldn't tell you 5 things about Bivol and 5 things about Beterbiev, and I'm a boxing purist. So I think we need to hone in a little bit, and we need to start looking at who these people really are. And that will help us follow the journey a little bit easier, and not just this fight needs to be made because it's up for undisputed. This fight, the fight for them two was way bigger than that. I'm sure if you looked into their story, it wasn't just probably about undisputed. It was probably for legacy and other things. But I couldn't tell you, even after watching the fight, anything about them. And I want to change that a little bit. And I think it has to start from the beginning. And obviously Origins on our show, December 13th, is the beginning for us.
So in terms of conveying that message, because over all the time I've spent in boxing, there's always been a bit of a resistance from a pocket of boxers who they see their job as going to the gym, getting ready for the fight, fighting on fight night. The PR element is, it's a necessary evil at best for a lot of fighters. Is there anyone you've worked with over the time you've been in the sport that kind of gets it, that's particularly good at conveying the narrative?
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple of people that come to mind, and I think CONOR Benn's probably one of them. I think he's been, when his rise, especially when he's going through names like Vargas, Algieri, Van Heerden, we was really starting to see CONOR Benn open up and become, this big star. And that wasn't just because of how good he was in the ring. It was because he was prepared to put his character and personality out there to the public. Obviously, what's happened over the last couple of years with him, he's still been very vocal and verbal about it. At times, he's had to be reserved because there's been a legal case, but he has tried his best to express himself to the public and connect, whether you love him or hate him. So for me, he understood that storytelling element. But there's probably a really few fighters that have really opened up. Tyson Fury did a good job of it, especially when he made his comeback. He opened up about issues bigger than boxing, really. Mental health, addiction, and stuff like that. I think he was a brilliant advocate for storytelling. At times, Joshua has been great at it, and at times he's been very produced and commercial about it. And I think that's kind of frustrated the fans, in particularly the British fans. But all of these guys are trying to tell their story in whatever way they feels fit for them. And I can understand it a little bit probably from Joshua's side, because he's such a big name and so famous that it must be tough for him to constantly repeat the story and go out, even walk out on the street and try and live a normal life. But I don't think enough people do it. Like you said, Danny, I just think some people are just meant to be behind the camera and just, get on with it in the gym and get down to the training and get into the fight. But I'm not trying to create celebrities. I'm not trying to create headliners for each and every one of these fighters. I just want to understand. I think for me, it was just my very early, the very early point of this was psychology, actually, where I've worked in the game and known fighters for a long time. I was very interested in boxing psychology and understanding why fighters even want to do this, because it's just such a brutal sport. And sometimes the risk outweighs the reward unless you're very, very good. So it started with that kind of being curious around that. And then once I started to open up people on that side of it, I started to understand boxers a little bit more. And then I was like, well, general public don't really understand this side of fighters and why they want to do this, because everybody's so different. You know, not everybody is coming from the streets and trying to fight for a better life, and that's usually the narrative that we see in boxing. Some people are, you know, you look at George Liddard, something that I've really tried to understand about him in build up to this main event. He comes from a really nice family. You know, he's got a nice family background, lives in a nice house, comes from a nice part of the UK, out in the Essex suburbs. So I've really tried to understand what it is about him that flicks the switch when he gets in the ring and the bell goes and he just wants to take someone's head off and take him out. That's what I've been trying to understand, and I've been trying to get them to verbally explain that, which I think there is a bit of a dark side to George. When you look in his eyes, he's got something. There's something there that just with the flick of the switch can change. So, but it's just trying to get that out of him and trying to explain that, and also helping him understand it. And I'm sure he's got questions about himself that he wants to understand. So, yeah, it's been a process, Danny. Like it's not been easy, but it's been very interesting. And I think if you're really into boxing, you'll really love what we're doing. So stay tuned, because there's going to be a lot of good content coming out.
Do you think that kind of opening up is tougher in boxing than other sports because it's traditionally such a macho environment? Letting yourself be vulnerable can't be easy.
Definitely is. This has been a challenge as well because there's a lot of bravado and a lot of ego in boxing. So it's just been trying to get certain people to open up about certain things, but we're not trying to display weakness at any point. We're just trying to display relative topics to certain people. So I'm not trying to, you know, show your opponent that, you know, you're weak in certain areas. It's just that part of who you are and part of where you've got to today was because of this reason. So everybody's got a great story, and I'm just trying to really hone in and deliver that. But yeah, bravado and ego has definitely played a part in a lot of fighter story. And to be honest with you, Danny, you'll know this because you've spoken to fighters for years and years and years. They kind of need it. They kind of need a little bit of ego, because the job and the task at hand is so crazy that without it, you probably have to question why you're even doing it. You know, you're getting up at stupid hours, you're literally starving and, you know, whatever to your body to try and make weight, which is actually bizarre when you think about it.
Yeah.
And then you're getting in and punching a man or a woman around for 10, 12 rounds for money, really. You know, it's kind of like you don't know this person, they're trying to take your head off. So when you look at it compared to regular jobs in the world or even other sports, you've got to probably ask yourself, what's making this person tick here? Because I'm missing it. I'm just missing what this actually is. And a lot of these fighters, they have something within them. And that's a little bit of ego, it's a little bit of bravado to want to be the best, certainly. But also that little bit of hunger and desire and passion comes from the fire that's burning within. And the fire that's burning within is usually struck by something. There has to be a reason for it. You can't just want to get up every day and say, I want to be a sportswoman. That to fight like they fight and to go through the deep trenches and the hard rounds and the injuries and to make him wait, there's got to be something burning within you that dives deeper than just wanting to be a great boxer. You know, there's something there that has to keep you going and pushing you through those tough times. And that's all we're trying to figure out, really, Danny.
And just finally, before I let you go, fight night's obviously next week, December 13th, as we said. What can people expect that maybe will be different from a standard Friday night show that you might watch?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to do some stuff at the event, which is also a bit different, some experiences that we're putting together. So if you've bought a ticket, you're going to have a little bit different, something different on offer. That will all be released in the next week as well. But I think just, you know, this is really bridging the gap between those major shows and the small hall events where we've got a really good card. It's stacked with talent, top to bottom. We are going to be showcasing the storytelling throughout the event. We're just getting all of our screens together now to figure out how we're going to run these promos, if you like, in between. We've got a really good entertainment team that are coming in, and we've, like I said, we've got really nice experiences. So you'll see something that really bridges the gap. You know, we're not charging through the roof prices. We've got a really good, I think, really reasonable prices for our level of show. And if you just love boxing and you just love the next generation and a new era, like all these guys and girls on this card are part of that. They're all going to go on to be the big headline names that we see today, you know, headlining these major shows. So if you love that side of the sport and you want to come down, you want to watch it, or you want to tune in, watch out for our broadcast partner announcement this week, and you'll be able to watch it. But it's going to be a brilliant night. And I was nervous about it at first when I pulled the trigger on it, because I was like, you know, we've actually committed to it now. So, but it's been brilliant. It's been a brilliant experience. And actually, I'm looking forward to getting this one done. And I'm looking forward to working on the next one, because we're running out of time, and fight week's coming up, and there's so many more things that I want to do. But we'll have to put that all into the next one.
Let me wish you the absolute best of luck with it. I'll be watching with interest as soon as we find out who the broadcast partner is. Even if it's one of our rivals, perhaps, you know, I'll still tune in just for you. But yeah, no, really looking forward to it. I hope it goes well, and let's catch up again after the show.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it, mate. I'll speak to you soon.
Mate. Take care.